Hi, my name is Maurizio Mariani and I'm the director of the 18 City International Platform. From almost 15 years inside our organization, we are observing and studying the food trend and especially the restaurant business and especially the public food service business. Public food services means the school canteen, hospital canteen, and the business and and industry and elderly home mainly. Why food system and why public food service in particular should become a key factor to fight coronavirus, and why this sector should become an asset for cities and not only a cost, because we need to provide food to elderly people or to pupils in the school. The value and the social value and the economical value of the food consumption out of home is rising 400 billion euro in Europe and is employing 8.5 million workers. And inside the contribution of public food service is quite huge, is 81 billion in revenue and 2 million workers. We estimate that in Europe the public food service is serving around 81 million meals per day. So it's a large sector, is impacting and is concerning one citizen over 5 in Europe, and maybe more if we calculate on active people. But the agri-food behind sector, the sector of the agri-food business behind the food service is much more bigger. And in the last decades, we observe a concentration on this field, on this sector, and a polarization. We have now around 60% of the total workers employed by small and medium enterprises, but rising only 45-48% of the total market value. And if we give a look to in a deeper way, and we analyze the contribution of the small enterprises in Europe on the food sector, we discover that they account for 24% of the total workers, but rising only 10% of the total market value. So we can assume without any doubt that a small scale are much more labor intensive than food industry. So food is a large economic sector, and a shift of paradigm into a more local and sustainable system should create thousands of jobs. Creating a lasting network of small and medium enterprise should contribute to the resilience of the food system itself. Agroindustry and food miles are responsible of large quota of air pollution, and some new research evidence are showing the correlation between the effect of the virus and the air pollution. Of course, we need a deeper investigation on this, but there is some study already done by the University of Siena in Italy and by the Harvard University in US. Cities as Milano, New York, and many others are today developing a food aid system to compensate the restrictive measures taken to limit the spread of the virus. We need to learn from this city, and we need to create more synergy and connecting the food dots. We have producer, we have processor, we have distribution. These sectors sometimes are not well connected. We need to reconnect all these points.
My name is Robin Gourley. I've worked in public food service for most of my career. I'm talking here about food served in schools, hospitals, prisons, and elsewhere. Public food essentially is about health, education and the well-being of people, and there's never been a more important time than in this COVID pandemic to recognise that. Many of today's problems relate to food. Obesity and diet-related disease, loss of biodiversity, loss of soil quality, intensive farming, and public food done properly is able to source more local food, more fresh food, more in-season food, and this produces a multiple dividend for society. In this time of COVID pandemic, the idea that public food service is more than a school meal or a hospital meal comes to the fore. Public food service should be regarded as part of critical national infrastructure, yet it's frequently taken for granted. and absent in any planning for pandemic or otherwise, and absent in the delivery to citizens. In these times of self-isolation and panic buying, vulnerable people, the elderly, the sick and disadvantaged should not be left to fend for themselves. But not all cities and regions have responded well to taking care of these vulnerable people in the population. In Scotland, public food is managed by local authorities and cities, and public food managers have quickly developed a range of systems to feed vulnerable people, changing, for example, school dining rooms into community meal facilities, distributing meals to homes, hot, fresh and frozen, offering vouchers or cash for people to buy food, or delivering food packs to people in hardship. The important thing is, I believe, in this or any future pandemic, the human right to food should be recognised. There should be an absolute duty on the local and national government to meet that right, that the role of feeding vulnerable people and key workers should be planned in advance and not left to chance, as it has been in this pandemic. The creation of an IT solution to allow people to access food is critical and needs to be planned for. And this may be a public-private solution involving tech solutions, public food service and local food producers too. In conclusion, public food service is part of critical national infrastructure, and I hope that in this EU virus hackathon this can be raised up as a key issue and solutions found. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Katie Wilson, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Urban School Food Alliance, and I am an active member of the Eating City platform. As we work through this pandemic, it is becoming even more obvious that we all across the globe must strengthen our willingness to ensure access to food for every human being. In a few short months, we have seen how food insecurity quickly escalated, particularly for children. The institution of school meals provided millions of children essential nourishment for growth and life sustainability. But during this pandemic, as schools closed, so did the access to food close for millions of children. How do we answer a child's question about why they are hungry? No person, and certainly no child, should be experiencing hunger. For far too long, we have allowed our food supply and our supply chain to fall into the hands of others. We have not paid enough attention as to how fragile it was becoming or how far away it has traveled from the consumer. To recover from this health and economic crisis, we must relook at the critical role food access and access to healthy food plays in the productivity of each and every community we reside in. We need to look at what has happened very quickly in the issue of food insecurity and rekindle more of the links between local growers, local production of food, and those that consume it. Food is a human right, and it is also a social justice issue. So we really should find ways to use agriculture as both a form of nourishment for all people, as well as an economic stimulus to the villages and communities we live in. Food is definitely a catalyst to peace, and governments should learn from this crisis that the critical role of food and food access plays in all sectors of society.
My name is Giuseppe Mastruzzo. I'm from the Eating City platform. Have you ever thought of the language that the coronavirus crisis is generating? One of the expressions that we most often use is social distancing. It is an expression that should be put differently, perhaps. Social protection, Social distancing means that we are thinking individually and about our individual safety. Social protection means instead that we are taking measures to protect ourselves as individuals, but also as a community. It is as a community that we must rethink many of the things that we took for granted before. These dramatic measures that we have taken, this confinement for weeks in our homes, is to preserve a basic right that pertains to us all, the right to life. However, the right to life is meaningless if we do not ask ourselves when life can be understood as fully human. The human right to life, in fact, is meaningless if it is not filled with other rights that make that life humanly worth to be lived, and that right to life full. The commons are defined as those tangible and intangible spaces, not only public parks, but also the internet, which is an intangible space. Goods, services that are essential to our development as citizens and human personae. And one of these spaces, a very traditional one, a factor that makes for community, food, must be understood from this new viewpoint, this new vantage point of the crisis as a commons. Food cannot be just a commodity. We can see it today in our urban spaces. Many marginal people are now cut off from the basic means of living. So what the crisis teaches us is that we must rethink spaces, services, goods in metropolitan contexts and beyond. And one of these is food. The emergency underlines that food cannot be understood just as a commodity, but since it is essential for the right to life, food must be guaranteed as a commons whose proper access is allowed to everyone in the community. A lesson that cities must get from the coronavirus crisis is that an organized network of public provision of food to be shared as a commons from whoever needs it is essential for the well-being of the whole urban community. Human life is more than life. The right to life is not sufficient if it is not a right to human life. One of the basic matters of human lives is a proper offer of food for everybody.
To finalize, I would like to underline the necessary shift of paradigm on public food service from utility to commons to increase cities' food resilience. Cities should use in emergency the facility they have, like commissary kitchen, logistic platform, originally used to produce a meal for public food service, to deliver food at home to people in needs, elderly people, low-income family, and to create special food program during emergency. Connecting local and small, medium producer, farmers, fishermen, processor, to become as a whole of the city food system, connecting different food dots. That's one of the levers we need to use. We have quite all the ingredients on the table to make a nice recipe and a delicious meal, but we need to connect all the different dots. Mutualizing experience, sharing logistics, increase efficiency, creating online platform to connect different food dots, to connect people in needs of work and people who needs workers. I invite all cities to join the Milan Food Policy Pact. It's a perfect place where you can meet other people, other city, sharing experience and create innovative food policy that is helping you to foster food resilience inside your city and create really innovative food policy and action, not only in theory. That's the future we want. That's the future we need for next generation. That's the future we need for the next normal. Thank you.